We're here today with Val Galvin, yes, and we're going to interview her and her hooked rugs, renditions
and rags.
Rags, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Val, you have a long history in Ladysmith. Not you, but your family.
My family, yes, I do.
Because your great-grandmother was affiliated with the Travelers Hotel.
That's right. Annie Stevens, she came from Cape Breton in the late 1800s. And she came out with her husband Chris Stevens, who made they made their fame and fortune in the gold rush in Alaska. So with that money, they came and they bought up a lot of land on First Avenue in Ladysmith. And I'm not sure exactly on the dates. I know it was around the turn of the century, the 1900s, but they bought the land, they moved the Ladysmith Hotel, as you know, across the street, and they built the Travelers Hotel. This little girl is my grandmother on my dad's side. So Annie Stevens bought and built the hotel, and these were her three children. Poor Aunt Mame, I think his name was John, and this was Margaret Ann, which would have been the namesake of Margaret Ann
Patterson.
No, Margaret Ann McBride, who was the daughter of Dorothy McBride, who isn't in this picture yet. She wasn't born yet.
No, McBrides are here from Chemainus also.
Right. So these are the three generations. Grandma Stevens, Grandma Margaret Ann, Grandma Geraldine, my grandmother, and then my dad would be here, and then me, and then Joanna. So that's the lineup. So Annie Stevens came from Cape Breton, where it really was a popular pastime to hook rugs. So that's where my interest comes in with Annie Stevens, because I'm a rug hooker and she was a rug hooker. Was married twice. Her first husband, she had these three children. And then
that was Stevens?
And that was Miller.
Right.
That was Miller. And then the next guy she married was Stevens, and they had no children. They would go up to check their interests in the Klondike, and we're not really clear what her interests were, but we think that she and Chris had another hotel, much like the Travelers, only in the Klondike up in the Alaska somewhere.
Well, according to the history about the Travelers, when it was built, it was well known all over the world as being one of the most expensive and impressive hotels.
Fancy hotels. That's what I've read too. So, and that would be in keeping with like the crystal that we have left over that came around the horn and the different. This is kind of a fun one. So this was in the lobby of the Ladysmith Hotel before they moved it across the street. So this one, I think, was more like a promotional thing to promote either the Ladysmith Hotel or the Travelers Hotel. And this is a little bit later than this picture, because this little girl is Auntie Dee. So that's Dorothy McBride. She was Dorothy Reed. So she was the next little girl to come from this lady after her first husband died. So in this photo, this is Auntie Dee. And she's sitting on Margaret's knee. So this lady here is this lady here. Mm-hmm. And then this is Grandma Alistair.
Oh, she's playing the piano.
And she's playing the piano. And again, I think this was a promotional thing.
Grandma Alistair?
Yeah, I called her Grandma Alistair. Geraldine. So she was Geraldine Hurst.
Yeah.
She was Geraldine Hurst.
She married the Alistair here.
She married Bill Alistair, who is now featured in the bands of Ladysmith.
Yes.
This is Geraldine. So she was Geraldine Hurst, and now then she was Geraldine Alistair. We don't know who these two random guys are. This lady over here with the little dog, I think it's a Jack Russell on her knee. This is poor Aunt Mame. So this is this woman here. And we call her poor Aunt Mame because apparently she took up with some young man who went off to the gold rush, and he never returned. And she died of a broken heart. These fellows here are sitting around playing cards. So that's why we think kind of it's like a promotion for the hotel. And we think that this one here is Grandpa Alistair, because he boarded at the Travelers Hotel before he married Grandma Alistair. This is the Ladysmith Hotel. Yeah. And because Auntie Dee was born in 1900, And she looks like she's about 2 or 3. I'm thinking this is about 1903, 1902. Which would be in keeping with when they actually moved it across the street. I think that when you had photo in those days, it was very prestigious because not everyone could afford them. So even though they didn't have a lot of money, I don't think they had a lot of photos because people came and stayed at the hotel.
Now, you were saying earlier, some of this furniture here came out of the travelers.
Right. Well, I can tell you for sure, this chair here, this one used to be covered with paint and just really ugly. And this was forever in our little cabin. We had a cabin when we were kids over on Thetis Island. And Dad brought it home, and I remember him saying this was one of the chairs in the travelers in the kitchen. There's a buffet down in the sunken living room. Mom and Dad had a lot of the stemware, the glasses.
Yes, now what is unique about these is that they were imported from Austria. And there is an Austrian crystal that is very well known, and I guess Travelers Hotel wanted to have something special in terms of their glassware, so we have 3 different sizes. I would guess liqueurs and sherry and wine.
The hooking rugs came from Annie Stevens because that was something they did back east. She was born in Cape Breton. And on a trip back to Cape Breton in '79, this is after I was an adult, I saw the rugs. I said, I know how to do that. So I came home, and that's when I started hooking rugs. And so I think that it's just in my genes because Annie Stevens did it. She hooked a rug for every room in the Travelers Hotel, and I can believe it.
I can too.
Because that would have kept her busy, and then it would have added to the ambiance of the hotel. You see all along the edge here, those are all hand-hooked rugs that Annie Stevens would have done. So that's why I love this photo. It tells a whole story about Ladysmith, but it also tells the story about the hand-hooked rugs.
So you don't even know where the Sanskrit come from up front. Everybody says swastikas, but
no, that's a good luck sign apparently.
I know it is.
Yeah, but it's still kind of creepy because it's there.
Well, I know in the wartime it was quite a conversational piece.
Yeah.
For Second World War.
Now both my uncles are gone, but I know that Uncle Bill and Uncle Jerry, I think they both lived at the Travelers when they were young men before they went off to war.
Well, there was a lot of people lived in there.
Yeah, because it was like a rooming house sort of thing afterwards. After it was, because they had the rooms upstairs too. Mm-hmm. Right? The little girl at the museum told me that in this hotel, I think she said that there was a brothel underneath the one of the hotels on the First Avenue. Anyways, I would love to be able to bring in a tie of real hookers and rug hookers. Because I think that would be so fun. I've sat, the last 15 years on the First Avenue for the Arts on the Avenue, demonstrating. I sit with a frame and I sit there and hook, and it really is fun because it's like here I am on First Avenue where my great-great-grandmother used to hook her rugs. I know one story that I think it was Uncle Jerry used to recall because he would have been a young boy. I think she died in 24. And he would have only been like 7. I forget when he was born. But anyways, one of the stories, apparently in Annie Stevens' old age, she used to be quite deaf. And one of his memories of as a young boy was that he would come in and she would be sitting at her rug hooking or having her cup of tea or whatever it was. And in order to be able to hear what he was saying, she had one of those long horn things. And she would put it up. It just makes me laugh because it's like you see it in cartoons, but it really did happen. She had one of those long horn things so she could hear what he was saying. I think that she was a stubborn, independent, you would have had to be really on the ball to do all the things that she did in the 1900s. That impresses me no end. Because that's a big feat even in this day for someone to hop on a ship and just travel for a month or or go across Canada on your own and visit families. And this was 100 years ago when, you know, they wore clothes like that you took probably an hour just to get into them. In these pictures, they seem to have quite a bit of, I'm sure they were all just show clothes, or not show clothes, but the good clothes, but I don't think that they had a lot of money. Like, they weren't rich. They had to put on an air because they were, this is what I think, because they were running the hotel and they had to look the part. But I don't think that in the end it made a lot of money, especially during the Depression, because that's when everything fell apart, right?
Well, going down farther to which is now the Island Hotel, which was the Europe, Chicaros, another lady built that one.
Okay.
And then it was bought out by the Givandos.
Okay.
But I don't know, Mrs. Jacaro was sort of, I think, related to them. But again, it's a woman.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. I wonder why. Maybe there was a tax break or something.
Well, the guys were busy.
Yeah, they were out looking for gold nuggets somewhere. I remember a friend of mine, we called him Cousin Les, but he wasn't really a cousin. He was just a friend, and he was like a guitar player. This would have been in, I'm going to say, the mid to late 70s. And he was hired through some kind of agent through Vancouver, and he came over and he was hired to play his guitar and sing at the Travelers. And so I went up to see him, and it was so sad because he was sitting on this, I think it was in the days when it just wasn't at the highest level it had been when it first been built. And he was sitting in the corner, and there was just your regular kind of people sitting around drinking beer, and he wasn't that impressed. He was more like a lounge singer.
Yeah,
I think.
Was that before they had the his and her sides, or was it all one then?
I believe it was all one. Yeah, but it would have been right at the turn, because when I started going to public places, like the Horseshoe still had the two separate entrances, and so did the Green Lantern.
One time, the his and her sides, they would close down at 6 o'clock.
Oh.
Till 7. So people either had to go home,
yeah,
or just sit in their car and wait till it opened again.
And I don't have any memories of the Ladysmith Hotel, other than I know that that's where this picture was taken, in the lobby.
Pictures of it before they moved it.
Yeah, okay.
And I know they did put it on rollers and roll it across.
Right.
But if you look at the hotel, the front is here, of course, facing. But when they moved it, they never turned it around.
No.
So the back of it was the back of the hotel that faced the front of the street.
Right. Well, maybe it makes sense. I don't know what's on the other side, but maybe now there's a nice view of the harbor.
There is
a nice
So
view.
see, Annie Stevens was really thinking. She thought, I'm going to make this a water view hotel, and just moved it across. Every time we would go through Ladysmith, Mom or Dad or whoever we were with say, and there's Grandma Stevens' hotel. And so, if I had $1 million, it would be brought back, and it would be really nice if it could get brought back. But someone has to. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be a nice place to hook rugs in there?
Oh, believe me, if they brought the hotel back, I would hook a rug for every room.
They don't call her the happy hooker for nothing.